Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a major and fast developing situation that has shaken the region once again. Reports have emerged from Jenin that the Al-Qassam Brigades, the armed wing of Hamas, are claiming responsibility for a powerful strike that allegedly destroyed an Israeli Merkava tank during clashes with the IDF. This development is significant not only because of the symbolic value of the Merkava, which is often described as one of the most advanced tanks in the world, but also because of the escalating nature of the conflict in the West Bank, particularly in and around Jenin, which has increasingly become a focal point of resistance and Israeli military operations. The Merkava is a source of pride for Israel's military establishment, seen as a symbol of its technological superiority and battlefield resilience. It is designed with heavy armor, advanced targeting systems, and unique defensive features, making it one of the most formidable tanks globally. If the claim by Al-Qassam is accurate, this represents both a symbolic and operational blow to the IDF. For decades, Israel has relied on its armored capabilities to maintain a sense of dominance in asymmetric warfare environments. For Palestinian fighters to not only engage but allegedly disable or destroy such a platform carries huge implications for morale on both sides of the conflict. Jenin itself has long been a flashpoint of resistance. It has gained a reputation as a stronghold of armed factions, and over the past few years, it has been the scene of repeated IDF incursions, raids, and fierce clashes. The refugee camp in Jenin is densely populated, with narrow streets that often negate the full effectiveness of heavy armor. Guerrilla tactics, improvised explosive devices, and ambushes have been employed by militants, making it one of the most dangerous areas for Israeli forces to operate in. If the destruction of the Merkava is confirmed, it may highlight a tactical vulnerability when such armor is deployed in environments where militants are deeply entrenched and intimately familiar with the terrain. From the Israeli perspective, the IDF will likely either downplay or outright deny the incident until verification is possible. Historically, Israel has been cautious in confirming losses of high-value assets, especially when those losses could be used for propaganda by groups like Hamas or Islamic Jihad. On the other hand, the Al-Qassam Brigades are eager to broadcast such claims because they serve as both a recruitment tool and a morale booster for supporters. Destroying an Israeli tank is more than a battlefield event. It is a symbolic victory that communicates resilience, strength, and defiance against a militarily superior adversary. The timing of this development is also critical. Tensions across the West Bank have been steadily rising, with Jenin, Nablus, and other towns seeing a surge in clashes and resistance activities. Israel has intensified its military operations, citing the need to dismantle networks of militants and preempt attacks against Israeli civilians. Palestinians, however, see these raids as acts of aggression, violations of sovereignty, and evidence of an expanding occupation. Against this backdrop, the alleged destruction of the Merkava tank becomes more than an isolated battlefield incident. It becomes part of a larger narrative of defiance and escalation. For the Al-Qassam Brigades, this claim helps project an image of capability far beyond Gaza. Traditionally, Hamas has been seen as concentrated within the Gaza Strip, but its influence and operations in the West Bank have been expanding. By striking in Jenin, it signals both coordination and growing military sophistication. The use of advanced tactics or weaponry capable of targeting and destroying a Merkava would also suggest an evolution in the resources available to these groups. It raises important questions. How did they manage it? Was it through an anti-tank missile system smuggled into the West Bank? Was it an improvised explosive device planted along the tank's path? Or was it a combination of ambush tactics and terrain advantages? Each scenario paints a different picture of the evolving battlefield. The Merkava's reputation as nearly indestructible is built on decades of battlefield performance. Its unique design, with the engine placed in the front to better protect the crew, thick layers of modular armor, and integrated active protection systems, makes it one of the most survivable tanks in the world. For such a tank to be destroyed, militants must have employed either highly advanced weaponry or caught the tank in a highly vulnerable position. Either way, it represents a dramatic escalation in the ability of Palestinian fighters to challenge Israeli armored supremacy. Looking at the broader implications, if confirmed, this event could shape Israeli military strategy going forward. The IDF may increase reliance on aerial strikes, drones, and infantry, rather than risking tanks in urban or semi-urban areas of the West Bank. At the same time, it could push Israel to escalate operations in Jenin even further, attempting to send a message that such incidents will not be tolerated. However, escalation brings risks. Every additional raid, airstrike, or armored incursion fuels resentment, hardens resistance, and contributes to the cycle of violence that has plagued the region for decades. For Palestinians, particularly in Jenin, the destruction of a Merkava, if true, will be hailed as a historic act of defiance. It would demonstrate that even the most advanced military hardware can be vulnerable to determined resistance. Such narratives often inspire broader movements, rallying not just militants, but also the civilian population who see such victories as proof that resistance is possible despite overwhelming odds. The symbolism of David versus Goliath is powerful in this context, and a destroyed Merkava tank becomes more than just wreckage. It becomes a statement of survival and defiance. This development also has international dimensions. Observers and analysts worldwide will be closely watching for confirmation and details. If Palestinian factions are indeed gaining access to more advanced weaponry, questions will arise about supply lines, smuggling routes, and external support. Regional players such as Iran, Hezbollah, and other sympathetic actors may be seen as contributing indirectly to this capability, further heightening Israeli concerns and possibly reshaping the strategic balance in both Gaza and the West Bank. Meanwhile, the Israeli government faces pressure from within. The perception that the IDF, with all its advanced technology, can be challenged in places like Jenin threatens to undermine the narrative of absolute security. Public opinion in Israel is highly sensitive to military casualties and losses of equipment, particularly iconic symbols like the Merkava. This could fuel debates over military strategy, political leadership, and the broader direction of Israel's security policies. The situation also highlights the ever-growing importance of information warfare. In modern conflicts, perception often matters as much as reality. Even if the Merkava was only damaged rather than destroyed, or if the claim turns out to be exaggerated, the very fact that the narrative is spreading means it has impact. Social media, video evidence, and propaganda outlets play a critical role in shaping how both local populations and the international community perceive such events. For Palestinians, the image of a burning or disabled Israeli tank becomes a rallying cry. For Israelis, countering that narrative with denials or alternative explanations becomes a priority. It is also worth noting the historical context. Jenin has a long history of resistance dating back to the Second Intifada, when it was one of the most heavily contested areas between Palestinian fighters and Israeli forces. The memory of past battles, raids, and losses continues to fuel both sides. For many Palestinians, the fight in Jenin is not just about territory, but about identity, dignity, and resistance against what they see as decades of occupation and oppression. The alleged destruction of a Merkava tank is simply the latest chapter in this enduring struggle. Looking ahead, the international community will likely call for restraint, fearing that escalation in Jenin could spill over into wider unrest across the West Bank, Gaza, and possibly beyond. However, restraint has historically been difficult to achieve in this conflict. Every act of violence tends to spark retaliation, which in turn provokes more attacks. The cycle has been repeated countless times, and incidents like this only accelerate the pace. If this claim is proven true, the IDF will likely respond with overwhelming force, seeking to reassert its dominance and deter future attacks. Yet, in doing so, it may inadvertently strengthen the narrative of resistance and inspire further defiance. The paradox of asymmetric warfare is that the weaker side often gains more from symbolic victories than the stronger side does from military dominance. For the Al-Qassam Brigades, one destroyed tank can become more valuable than dozens of IDF raids in terms of propaganda and morale. At the same time, Israel will undoubtedly analyze the incident to understand the vulnerabilities exposed. Was it a failure of intelligence, poor tactical planning, or simply the hazards of operating heavy armor in hostile terrain? The lessons learned will influence not just operations in Jenin, but Israel's broader approach to counterinsurgency in the West Bank. Ultimately, this event underscores the enduring volatility of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Despite decades of military campaigns, negotiations, and international interventions, the conflict remains unresolved and combustible. Jenin stands as a stark reminder that the struggle is far from over, and that both sides continue to pay a heavy price. Whether this incident becomes a turning point or simply another flash in the ongoing cycle depends on how Israel, Hamas, and the wider region choose to respond in the coming days. For now, the alleged destruction of the Merkava tank in Jenin represents a moment of both tactical significance and deep symbolism. It highlights the vulnerabilities even of the most advanced militaries when fighting against determined resistance in complex terrain. It raises questions about the future of Israeli operations in the West Bank, the growing capabilities of Palestinian factions, and the broader trajectory of the conflict. What is certain is that this claim, whether fully verified or not, will reverberate far beyond Jenin, shaping perceptions, strategies, and narratives across the region. And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive. The situation is still developing, and we will continue to monitor updates and confirmations as they emerge. If you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can stay updated on the latest developments in global conflicts and geopolitical shifts. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.